welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. We're getting towards the end of the growing season, but there's still a lot of things to be thinking about. One of those things might just be what you're going to do with your next crop. For example, if you're planting wheat this fall, what pre-emerge herbicides should you be using to maximize weed control and yield potential? We'll share those options for you today.
The last couple of weeks on Ag PhD, we've been talking about soil testing. Well, today we've got one of the most important things, and I would go so far as to say the most important thing on your soil test and what you can do with it. We'll talk about that today.
Well, we have a difficult to control weed of the week, and you need to get it under control right now to ensure that you have a successful crop next year. We'll show you why coming up later in the show. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about the green bridge.
Well, it sounds
kind of
like
a bridge we painted green, Darren?
It sounds kind of like this bridge to nowhere, Brian, but what it is out in the field, you want to make sure that there's absolutely nothing growing for at least a couple of weeks before you plant the next crop. And here's why. You can harbor diseases and insects and other things like mites from one crop to the next.
So whether you are a crop farmer or you just have a garden, or even if you're a complete non-farmer, you have nothing to do with it, we just wanted you to understand what this term is and why it's so important and how farmers go about eliminating the green bridge.
When we think about continuous cereal production, this is where green bridge probably comes up more than anywhere else, because we have guys that are going from winter wheat and then the next year they're going to plant winter wheat again, and after harvest there may be some volunteer wheat that's out there, some seed that didn't make it all into the combine and hauled away from the field. When that starts to regrow out in a field, now if there was a disease present in that wheat, or if there was a bug present that likes to feed on wheat, he's only got to wait just a little bit of time and there's more new wheat popping up and he can right away reinfest that wheat. Now, let's just say that you were going to till that wheat under or burn it down the day that you're planting the next crop of wheat. Well, again, here that bug or that disease or that pest has only got to wait just a little bit of time and it's got brand new wheat coming up again. That's a host crop for it. So it's important for us to wipe out that host crop, so if we have bugs, diseases, whatever out in the field, that we can get rid of them too.
So a lot of farmers will accomplish this by doing tillage, like Darren mentioned, getting that soil as black as possible, burying all that residue at least a couple of weeks before they plant the next crop. In our operation and on a lot of farms, I don't want to have to worry about erosion or moisture loss that I would when I do tillage. So I'll go out there with a herbicide treatment. A lot of farmers have been using Roundup for many years, but unfortunately we're starting to see some Roundup resistant weeds. So now it means Roundup plus something else, most likely, like Banvel or 2,4-D. But another good option would be something like Gramoxone. A farmer could even throw in a little Sharpen that we may talk about a little later in the show for pre-emerge wheat application. So there are a number of different options that farmers have if they don't want to do tillage.
Well, the thing I'm thinking about, Brian, and when you're talking about tillage, we're mainly looking at what we're going to wipe out for weeds. What I'm concerned about most are pests that we really can't control, like, for example, wheat curl mites. If we've got them out in a field, and we saw a number of them again this year for guys who didn't eliminate that green bridge, there really isn't a good treatment option. They are so small, they're so tough to get, and a lot of people just aren't applying miticides, and especially not doing it timely. So once we have those mite issues in our wheat, we're just stuck. We don't have options for wiping them out again, and we're going to lose lots of yield and lots of profit. So for farmers, it's important to get rid of that host crop that's out in the field for at least a couple of weeks before we're going to seed that next crop. That way we don't have problems like these mites.
Well, it's not just the host crop, it's also weeds. And so this is one of the things in shorter growing season areas of our country where basically they harvest one crop and then they're planting winter wheat right behind it. What farmers in those areas will do is they'll do a pre-harvest burn down treatment. So if there are a few weeds, there is a little bit of green stuff left out there, they'll do a pre-harvest treatment, so then they get everything brown and dead for a while before harvest. Then they come in just shortly after harvest, planting the next crop, but still they have eliminated the green bridge. It's not that they can't have something out in the field, it's just that they don't want anything growing out in the field.
Well, it's certainly important for you to take care of your fields at least a couple of weeks before you plant that crop. Make sure there's nothing out there that's going to impact your crop, because if you're leaving all kinds of bugs and disease in the field that's just going to infest a new crop, it can be a big problem. One other thing you want to make sure you wipe out of your fields is our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave P. Most of your applied P gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more P available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing P availability can lead to increased P uptake in the plant. That's more P, and more P. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your P with Avail.
Upgrade your trailer to electric with the Rolltech electric system from AgriCover. Strong, flexible pivot arms and motor mount rotate and telescope, allowing the roll tube to rise and flex over heaped loads. The positive automatic lock is impossible to back off to control the flow of grain. This integrated system uses one wireless remote to operate up to 10 tarps and hoppers, keeping your driver out of the dust, rain, and harm's way. See the Rolltech system in action at an AgriCover dealer near you.
If you want to take your farm to the next level, you have to go where the in-field research is being done. Hi, I'm Darren Hefty with Ag PhD TV. One of the field tours that Brian and I have enjoyed the most each summer is the North Central Research Station tour in Michigan. There are over 500 acres of replicated trials in corn, soybeans, wheat, and numerous other crops. You'll learn more about crop fertility in a few hours than most farmers will in a decade. Visit agriliquid.com for all the details, and maybe we'll see you there.
At Titan Machinery and Case IH, we offer better solutions for all your production needs. It's more than our job, it's who we are. We are parts. We are service. We are training. And most importantly, we are here for you. In any season, for every reason, we've got you covered. Case IH and Titan Machinery, better solutions.
For years, FarmLogic has been the easiest and most convenient way to keep up with your farming operations. Well, it just got better. Introducing FarmPad for your phone. You always have your phone with you, so entering records as they happen is as easy as a touch of a button. Chemical database, GPS, service records, and more. When you do it on the farm, save it on your phone and it's backed up forever. Call or visit farmlogic.com for a free trial and find out why FarmLogic is the best decision tool for the farm.
Well, we talked a little bit about cereal production in the Farm Basics segment, but we have to start out anytime we're talking about cereals with pre-emerge herbicides. This is something that's fairly new for a lot of guys that say, what? You can use a pre in front of wheat? I thought that was just for corn and soybeans and cotton and those kind of crops. No, actually, it's very important in front of wheat. We're going to talk about a couple of options that are really good products, whether you have grass weeds or broadleaf weeds you need to get under control, and how you can just maximize your yield and time when you're producing wheat.
Okay, when we talk about wheat crop, it's basically a grass. And anytime we have a grass crop, it's much more difficult to control grass weeds in there. We've got a lot of options for broadleaf weeds in any grass crops, but in terms of controlling grass in the grass crop, it gets to be a little bit challenging. For years, winter wheat farmers were very concerned about downy brome. Now we have some options there. The spring wheat farmers were concerned about wild oats. We've got some more options there. And one of the products that a farmer can use pre-emerge that has activity on both wild oats and downy brome is Prepare. Now Prepare has the same active ingredient as Everest 2.0. It's an ALS product, but don't get too alarmed because we don't have a lot of grass weeds at this point that are resistant to ALS herbicides. But anyway, you go out there with this Prepare early on, pre-emerge, and you're going to get at least good suppression on wild oats, on downy brome, and on the foxtails. So then later on, your post-emerge grass herbicide doesn't have to do as much work.
Well, the thing I like, Brian, is when we're thinking about Prepare as an ALS product, for a lot of guys, they're using post-emerge products like Axial, for example. It's an ACCase inhibitor. So it's a different mode of action. So now we've got two different modes of action going out there against our grasses. And this is really important because we're seeing some ACCase resistance spreading in wheat growing areas. So it's nice having that ALS herbicide in there as well, so we take two shots at the grasses. But the other thing that I'd say is this: when it comes to any of the pre-emerge herbicides, you have to have the proper expectations. When we're looking at corn and soybean production, Guys have been using pre's in there for years, and they understand it's not going to be the only herbicide treatment I do all year. This is going to stop most of those early weeds. There will be a flush that comes later, and I'll need to spray post-emerge. But the good thing about my post-spray is I won't have really thick weeds out in the field like I would where I didn't use that pre.
Okay, here's the good and the bad with Prepare. It has more activity in higher pH ground. So if you have a soil pH that's consistently 7 or over, a lot of times you can get by as a farmer with 0.2 ounces per acre, and you can get the same effectiveness as the farmer who's got a, let's say, 6.0 pH using a 0.3 ounce per acre rate. So this is one of the things we want you to be thinking about, and a lot of farmers get concerned when they have the higher pH soil. They don't want the 0.3 ounces, the full rate, to do any damage to their wheat, so they'll just automatically cut back to that 0.2 ounces, and the 0.2 only costs about $4 an acre, 0.3 costs about $6 an acre, so there's not a huge cost difference there. It's more an issue of crop safety, and just the fact of the matter is we can get the same performance in that higher pH ground with the lower rate.
Well, the other thing with Prepare that I'd like to mention is you can mix it certainly with a Roundup burn down. You're going to have some good residual out of that product. It doesn't have to be tilled in or anything like that. It can be used in a no-till situation, which is really good. And when we're putting it out in that kind of situation, whether you mix the Roundup with it or not, it's going to have some activity on broadleaf weeds, but that Roundup really helps pick up the ALS resistant weeds and broadens the spectrum of the weeds you're going to control. So you can do okay on mustards and a few other species of weeds that could be important on your farm, but when you've got things like ALS resistant kochia, you're going to need that Roundup in the mix to try and wipe those weeds out too.
Okay, so even though grasses are a much bigger problem in wheat than broadleaves, there are still some farmers that are having issues with broadleaves in wheat, and they want something pre-emerge that'll do great on broadleaves. Well, there is a product now. We never used to have this option, but just in the last few years, Kicksoar came out. Well, the actual name for Kicksoar, the product, is Sharpen. So farmers are using Sharpen now pre-emerge in wheat. And the advantage to using it in wheat as opposed to soybeans, for example, you can only use 1 ounce in front of soybeans, otherwise you're going to get damage to the soybean field. Well, with wheat, you can use 2 or 3 ounces per acre. Now, it does get more expensive when you're using 2 or 3 ounces, but your broadleaf control is going to be excellent in many cases. It's not going to get every single broadleaf out there, but it's certainly going to get most of the broadleaves, at least using 2 ounces, if not even going all the way to 3 ounces.
Well, what I like when we were talking about the Green Bridge earlier in the show is you can use something like Sharpen. It is a very, very fast burn down product. I mean, when you're spraying Sharpen out there and you're putting some MSO with it, you can certainly mix some Roundup in there to pick up grasses as well. It's going to burn weeds down basically in 1 or 2 days at 2 ounces. You're just going to fry weeds quickly. And a lot of guys like that when they're thinking, I want to make sure I have at least a couple of weeks that I'm eliminating this Green Bridge. Sharpen's a great way that, boom, I spray, the weeds are gone, and I feel really comfortable about that. So Sharpen is an excellent burn down product. Again, as Brian was mentioning, its control is on broadleaf weeds. So you're going to need the Roundup in there to pick up some grasses, which is very important going into cereal production. But I really like the residual control at 2 ounces of Sharpen. We're going to see broadleaf weed control pretty good for at least a couple of weeks into the crop. We let the wheat get up, we get a nice stand established without a lot of competition from these big broadleaves, and that's going to be a good thing for you going into next season.
Yeah, but if I'm spending the money on the 2 ounce rate, it's like $10 an acre. I'm going to have, I would say, 4 to 6 weeks worth of residual. 2 weeks, I think it's going to be way more than that, especially when you're putting it out in the fall. In fact, I'll even see a little bit of residual control all the way until the spring. Again, you know, not everybody has this issue with broadleaves in wheat, but if you do, Sharpen's a great option.
Well, we highlighted 2 products that you could use pre-emerge, and we really like those because neither one of them we really want to use post-emerge. Again, as Brian was saying, Prepare, it is the same active ingredient that's in Everest 2.0, but it doesn't have the crop safener. So we don't want to use the Prepare post-emerge if we don't have to. And also with the Sharpen, that has to be done before the crop is up. Now there's another option, Valor, that could be used. It's got a 30-day window where you have to put it out 30 days ahead of when you're going to plant wheat.
So in other words, you're not going to use it in front of wheat.
We've seen some injury that way before, especially in areas that don't get much rainfall.
Yep.
So we're kind of concerned about that. We'd much rather use the Sharpen where we're not worried about injuring the wheat.
The other thing is some farmers will talk about using Maverick, Olympus, or PowerFlex pre-emerge. You can do that, but we'd rather see you save that for post-emerge use because you're only going to use that 1 time per season. We'd like to start out with Prepare or Sharpen, then follow with the Maverick, Olympus, Olympus or PowerFlex if necessary a little bit later on, so you have another shot. All three of those products are definitely going to be better on downy brome, so in winter wheat, PowerFlex, Olympus, and Maverick are great options.
Well, when it comes to our weed of the week, it's going to take something pretty strong. This weed's tough. Have you identified this week's weed of the week?
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seeds so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
Whether you're planting, spraying, or harvesting, there's nothing more important in farming than getting it right from the start. At Case IH, we got our engines right the first time with our SCR technology that maximizes horsepower while meeting tough emission standards. While other companies are switching technology, Case IH already has over 30,000 proven engines in the field. The world of farming is changing. Be ready with the proven leader in efficient power. Case IH.
For lower cost, higher production, see your Mandaco Agri-Dealer. Ask about the best production-built land roller on the market. Mandaco, simple design for easy transport to easy use. 12 to 85-foot widths, heavy-duty 4x8 3/8-inch tube frame, and now available with a steerable wing wheel. Mandaco land rollers, improved soil-to-seed contact, faster, more uniform germination, less moisture loss, eliminate downtime due to rocks. See your Mandaco Agri-Dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz. Call.
Capello corn headers are designed for producers who expect more. Expect more grain in your bin. Expect an industry-leading 2-year manufacturer's warranty. Expect Capello-designed chopping and folding options that save you time and money. And whether red, green, or yellow, expect row size options that fit your operation because all producers deserve the best. Expect Capello. It's a head above the rest.
When we start talking about soil testing, the most important thing that you can get there for other farmers is cation exchange capacity. And when I say other farmers, you're probably wondering, what are you talking about, Brian? Because you always say you got to have soil pH test first, base saturation after that. Yep, those are more important as a farmer. But here's the whole thing. We live in this big society where we're less than 1% of the population, and we have to be really good stewards of the land. And the way you start by being a good steward is knowing what your soil can hold. So this cation exchange capacity test, it's fairly inexpensive, and also this cation exchange capacity is not really going to change a whole lot from one year to the next, because it's basically a measurement of the type of clay you have in your soil, which isn't going to change, the amount of clay you have in your soil, which isn't going to change, and the amount of organic matter in your ground, which is going to change very slowly over a long period of time. So I'm just trying to say, get this cation exchange capacity test done. If you only got it done once every 5 or 10 years, that's probably good enough. At least you'll know roughly how much of anything your soil can hold, from water to herbicides, all the way to nutrients, and that's where we really wanted to focus on today with this cation exchange capacity.
When you think about the holding capacity of our soil, one of the biggest things that I look at for our farm operation is just how much of a leachable nutrient can we hold, like nitrogen, for example. When we're raising 200 plus bushel corn, we want to put on quite a bit of nitrogen, but we don't want that nitrogen to leach away or run off or have any problems that way. We want to keep that nitrogen in our field and in our crop because we're investing a lot of dollars in this, and we're very conscious of the impact we're having on the environment. So with cation exchange capacity, we'll take that number. Let's just say our cation exchange capacity is 15. We'll take the cation exchange capacity times 10 to give us a rough estimation of how much nitrogen our soil can hold at any one time. So if we had a CEC of 15 times 10, that's 150 pounds of nitrogen we could hold at any one time.
Okay, continuing with this example, let's say we had that 150 pound holding capacity. If you test your soil and you find you already have 30 pounds there, the most you can put on then is 120 pounds. Well, you might say, I'm going for 200 bushel corn. I got to put 200 pounds of nitrogen out there. All right, well, you just can't do it in one application. You've got to split apply. The other thing is consider using some nitrogen stabilizer products. Those will help hold the nitrogen in the ammonium form longer, which attaches itself to soil, as opposed to nitrate, which is very leachable. So you have to be thinking all the time with this nitrogen deal, and I just want to tell you a quick story why. A couple of years ago, Darren and I went to the country of Denmark, and we were talking to all these farmers raising pretty good wheat yields who said, we'd love to put some more nitrogen on. I said, well, that sounds easy to me. Why don't you just put more nitrogen on then? They said, no, we can't. Our government limits us on how much nitrogen we can use. Well, what had happened is for years earlier, all ththese farmers didn't know their cation exchange capacity numbers. They were over applying nitrogen. And where do you think that nitrogen went? Went down into the water. And pretty soon, when city people see nitrate tests come back time after time after time too high, they say, well, farmers must not know what they're doing. Let's regulate them. And I don't know about you, but I don't want any more regulations on the farm. So we have to regulate ourselves. We have to be responsible with the nutrients that we're applying.
Well, there are a lot of important things on a soil test, and we strongly encourage you to soil test your ground this fall and learn how to read that test yourself. One of the important things that you're going to need on the test is cation exchange capacity. So before you send in your samples to the lab, make sure you're going to get a good cation exchange capacity reading so you can understand the holding capacity of your soil. It's very important for your production.
Another thing that's important to do this fall is control our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you how to do it on your farm coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Your farm tells a story, one that continues with the decisions you make. Introducing the Enlist Weed Control System, an advanced herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate for exceptional control of tough weeds. The next chapter begins.
I love it when our Weed of the Week is something that everybody can identify with. You probably were thinking, wow, that looks a lot like alfalfa. It really is alfalfa. It's volunteer alfalfa.
Now, before we get a bunch of hate mail saying, well, you can't kill alfalfa, we need to kill this alfalfa because next year we want to plant a different crop. So we have a lot of guys in the fall that say, hey, I want to take my alfalfa stand out. Next year I want to raise corn or soybeans or wheat or some other crop. What do I need to do? The most important thing you need to do is control that alfalfa this year. Don't wait until next spring. If you do, you're going to suck that much more moisture out of the ground and potentially even nutrients too that are going to be tied up, or at least early in the season, so you won't have those available for your crop.
Well, the big thing to think about is that alfalfa is a perennial plant and it has a very extensive root system. Now, for a lot of things, that's very good when you're trying to raise alfalfa, but when you're trying to kill it, that makes it much more difficult. Now, we like to use Roundup because it will get down in that root system and kill every growing point along the rhizomes that are putting up new alfalfa shoots. That's good, and Roundup is the best option at a very strong rate, unless you have volunteer Roundup ready alfalfa, then it gets to be more challenging.
Well, the other thing is, if you don't spray until after your first frost. Once you get your first frost, now alfalfa becomes more difficult to control with Roundup. You'll find that your Roundup performance just isn't the same. So what we want you to do, if you're going to use Roundup, is use a couple of quarts and do it well before the first frost, maybe a week or two before the first frost. That's where you have the best success. If you're after the first frost, or if you have Roundup ready alfalfa, my suggestion would be go out with a quart of Banville. It'll cost about $10 an acre, but that will do an excellent job on the alfalfa. May not get all of the root system entirely, but it's certainly going to be a good product to use. Now, if you want, you can use 2,4-D instead of Banville, especially if you're going to go to soybeans next year and you're worried about rotational restrictions.
The other thing to think about is tillage. If you're going to do tillage to try and control alfalfa, you're just chopping those rhizomes. You're going to have lots of shoots that come up next year. It's pretty ineffective by itself. But if you're doing a herbicide ahead, then a couple weeks later after that herbicide has done its job, you do a little bit of tillage. That would be the way I'd approach it.
Well, once again, our Weed of the Week is volunteer alfalfa, and that's it for our Weed of the Week, but stay tuned, Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
What are farmers doing to feed the planet? They're using Quadtrek technology, soil management, and planting systems from Case IH to foster a better growing environment that maximizes yield potential. Visit caseih.com to be ready.
If you're not harvesting already, you will be soon. And with all the good things in harvest, we also create some issues in our fields. We'll discuss one of them in today's Iron Talk. Harvest is a lot of work, but also a lot of fun. It's good seeing all the efforts you put into the crop paying off. However, as we hustle to get this year's crop out of the fields, it's easy to damage next year's yield potential at the same time. What I'm talking about is compaction. It's tough not to compact areas of your field as you carry all the weight of your crop crossing back and forth in the field and to the wagons or trucks that'll haul the grain away. While there are solutions to keep trucks out of the field that we can talk about on another show, the immediate fix to the random compaction tracks often left by the auger wagon running around the field is to change the mindset of your operators. Harvest time compaction is created by us. We're the ones driving all over the fields. Sure, you can do some deep tillage to break those tracks up, but it's more work and it takes time. Running carts and combines straight with the rows to the end of the field allows you to minimize the amount of corrective tillage you'll need to do. Also, when it's wet, sure, you can get through the field, but if you aren't desperate, it's just not worth it. Keep that in mind as harvest gets really busy this year. Reducing compaction leads to significantly higher yield potential next year. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
For years, FarmLogic has been the easiest and most convenient way to keep up with your farming operations. Well, it just got better. Introducing FarmPad for your phone. You always have your phone with you, so entering records as they happen is as easy as a touch of a button. Chemical database, GPS, service records, and more. When you do it on the farm, save it on your phone and it's backed up forever. Call or visit farmlogic.com for a free trial and find out why FarmLogic is the best decision tool for the farm.
You expect a lot from this seed, and as it grows through each stage of development, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers is there, feeding your crop exactly what it needs when it needs it. So no matter how you fertilize, no matter when, AgroLiquid efficiently brings all the nutrients your crop needs for a great harvest. From 1 kernel in the ground to 600 on the ear. For better yields and better quality, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers.
Whether you're planting, spraying, or harvesting, there's nothing more important in farming than getting it right from the start. At Case IH, we got our engines right the first time. With our SCR technology that maximizes horsepower while meeting tough emission standards. While other companies are switching technology, Case IH already has over 30,000 proven engines in the field. The world of farming is changing. Be ready with a proven leader in efficient power. Case IH.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave P. Most of your applied P gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more P available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing P availability can lead to increased P uptake in the plant. That's more P, and more P. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your P with Avail.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
The all-new S-Cube commercial tender is the only tender on the market with poly tanks, giving you the capability to haul seed, fertilizer, water, or liquid fertilizer. Each cube can hold 300 units of seed, 2,000 gallons of liquid, or 300 cubic feet of fertilizer. Options include full functioning wireless remote, stainless steel conveyors, and self-contained hydraulics. Get yours today at Norwood Sales.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's show, but be sure to join us again next time for another Weed of the Week, Iron Talk, Farm Basics, and a whole lot more. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
75 to 95% of soil-applied phosphorus may be tied up and made unavailable to plants. Farmers use organic proteins and other fertilizer innovations to ensure their crops are fed properly. For more information, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.